How you doing, Coach Reed?
Doing well, sir.
Good.
How are you?
All right, doing well. We are looking at the evaluation from the other day. Do you remember what your objective was? I got there a little late, so I didn't see an intro or anything like that. But could you tell me about how the class started and how it links to that objective?
Yes, sir. The objective was for parallel and perpendicular lines. Class started with a warm-up. Every day, students come in, they pick up their paper, and they begin the warm-up. The warm-up was what we've done previously, which was y equals mx plus b, slope-intercept form. So the students came in with background knowledge of how to find slope from a graph, how to find y-intercept from a graph, how to create an equation. And what we were learning that day was how do you, given that information, given y equals mx plus b, how do you find a parallel and perpendicular line? So the objective was to identify parallel perpendicular lines given lines.
Okay. So the warm up is something that you did this before, prior, or it's something that they're used to. You do it on a regular basis.
Yes, so that's the routine when we come into class because I'm checking homework and I'm doing attendance and don't want to have any wasted time. So they come in, they pick up any papers they need for the day. They pick up their calculator. There's a routine where they walk around the room. They have to first get the first stuff, then get the calculator, get their notebooks, take a seat, and they're supposed to begin immediately. Now, you came in sixth period, which is my most challenging class, and so they get a little bit more promptings from me before they get started on the work. I'm still working on how to fix that for sixth period.
What are some of the issues that you have with those guys as far as it's concerned? Just like getting on task, or?
Well, it's unfortunately, and this happens every now and again. I mean, many years you just have great classes, and this year, sixth period, just by the confluence of counselors and how the schedule turned out, 25% of them are repeaters. And that's not necessarily a bad thing because many repeaters, when they have starting the second year, realize and they turn the switch, I need to change something in order for, but unfortunately the repeaters in that class, several of them still have not learned and they're continuing the same bad behaviors they had last year, which is just off task, not wanting to learn the material. So I've been working, calling parents, been working with the administrator. The students have been through several rounds of ISS and that sort of thing. So that would be on one side is a few students who are consistently making bad choices. And so tier 2, tier 3 remediation, what's not working. For the rest of the students, there are 3 high-level students who are able to get the material, and by high level, I should say on grade level.
Right.
And then there's a lot of significantly low students in that class.
Now, with those kids that that finish early or they feel comfortable with the material, have you considered having them do or aid in some way with the other kids? I know that you do grouping. While we were there, you had different groups working with one another, but maybe where those kids kind of branch out beyond that group and help you out, kind of like of aid, kind of help direct, like peer to peer help.
That's a really good idea that I think I'm going to look into. I appreciate that. That would really help my professional practice.
That's awesome. What type of data do you collect that daily from your classes? I know you have a tested subject, so the data is important. Not as if we're like saying let's just teach to the test, but obviously covering the material, making sure that it's in line with the TEKS, which is in line with the school standard. So what type of assessments do you do, and how do you know where your kids are at as far as tracking that data? How do you use that data? Or like when you're planning and you're doing lessons like with your algebra team or just individually?
Great question. Being that algebra is a STAR tested subject, we are immersed in data, and that's one of the things that I think we do well. We use a program called Mastery Connect, which easily enables us on any given assignment to scan the material, and we can do it on a phone. I use this class iPad, and it's able to get the data in, and it tracks it not just by assignment. So I mean, there's a lot of programs like ZipGrade and things like that can grade quickly, but the unique benefit to Mastery Connect is it's TEK based. So as we're moving through, it tracks, regardless of what the assignment was, regardless of what date it was, it tracks how they did on that particular TEK. And then if you retest the same TEK, it modifies the grade. So it moves it up or down, and it labels the students as in need of remediation or mastery. So as we move towards STAR next semester, we have live actionable data that change and moves with the students and is able to help us do grouping.
So when you look at this data, you have, student X who's struggling with, a particular TEK. What's different for that kid versus student, A or B that knows this particular TEK that you're covering well, but maybe have other struggling areas? What do you do for those students?
Great question. So remediation is a big issue that obviously the students who are struggling need. So we provide tutorials at lunch, and we require those students to come to them. Since we are 5 teachers on the algebra team, we have lunch tutorials every day of the week. So every teacher is assigned a different slot at lunch. So we have a tracking system where the student will take a slip and have to go to that teacher on whatever day they're assigned, and then the teacher who's tutoring them signs the paper, says exactly what they were working on. So you can assign for that specific kid, he's deficient in this TEK, and when they go to that teacher, he has to work on something to do with that TEK. The benefit to that is you can reach more students that way, because most of us have duty on some days, and it's more limited.
All right, that's good. So, as we were in there, you had a couple of things happen. Number one, quick, smooth transitions, going from, doing one particular activity to another activity, keeping student engagement. However, we still had a couple of kids that seem like they're kind of disconnected from what was going on. Have you thought about, something that you probably could do, or for those kids to help them out?
Mr. Banks, I think that is a very good question. Mr. Banks, I think that's an excellent question as far as trying to help out those students that are disconnected.
Yeah.
The first thing.
Well, this is it's a difficult thing, because as a teacher, you fight the feeling of this kid isn't doing what he's supposed to do, and we set the standard, and he's still not doing it. It's like a constant thing, and I think as we laughed about it, in a sense, it's more of a sense of, I think having support as well, from your standpoint as a teacher, and what are your options as far as dealing with administration, with that teacher, how can you with that student, how can you get that student, if that student is just not compliant, how can you get that student, taken care of beyond you, legally. Obviously there's things in consideration of that, but a big portion of education, obviously, it's a big toll on the teacher, is looking and seeing and ensuring that every student is engaged, and so how can we help out with that?
Great point. Can't give up on any students, and I definitely believe that. I've been through different trainings. Love and Logic would say you've got to really build relationships with these students, and so, I know Love and Logic is a funny name, but you've got to, so even with kids who have a big wall that they put up and have defense mechanisms, starting off with statements like, I noticed you've got a new pair of shoes, and just innocuous statements just to let the kid know that you care, you're an adult, you're an adult that's concerned. So maybe building those relationships might do it. But I'm open to, any solutions anybody has.
So maybe something that you can look into as far as that's concerned. Technology. You use technology, impressed with technology. The kids are able to navigate between different types of technology, and it was not for technology's sake. I think that's a big thing, that kids use technology, but they use it appropriately. And then the other thing that's important about it, that using it for a purpose. It's not like, hey, we're gonna do the same assignment that I can do on paper just because it's on computer. They have computers, but being able to use it for a purpose, and like for instance, you're able to track kids' data while they're doing things on that at that same time. How do you approach that when making your lessons, and how's that helped you out, or is it a hindrance for you, or what?
Great question. I think that I have fallen into that trap from time to time, where you go to a teacher training and there's this really neat piece of technology and you bring it back and you want to incorporate it, and then at the end of the class period you're like, I mean, that was neat and the kids were entertained, but they did not get the lesson, and the data shows it. And so that those are examples, when it has failed. So the ways that I'm trying to use it this year that I think are finding success. So our school, it's really a nice blessing. We have our one-to-one campus now, and so every student has touch screen Chromebooks, and so we're trying to find ways where the students are able to incorporate that technology. So I've got styluses, styli, I think is the plural for that, for each student, and they can write on the screens, and so their work can be digital. Now, the problem I'm having, I want to use OneNote. That's the program I use in class. I use a Microsoft Surface, and I'm able to walk around the room. It wirelessly connects to the projector, so I can use proximity to try and control some of the focus issues and engagement issues you were talking about. And if OneNote, there's one issue that the tech department's trying to solve, because I can disseminate the materials to the students so that we're not having to print hundreds of copies of papers. And furthermore, the students, if they're able to write in OneNote online, they would have their notes digitally, and they would have it for the whole school year. That's one of the issues. Some of our students don't bring backpacks, and when you send notes home, I mean, it gets folded up, put in their pocket, and then it never comes back again. We use a binder system. As you saw, there's bookshelves in the room for the binders, but a lot of students' organizational skills are not very good, even if you give them dividers. So the benefit of the online component would be it's forced organization, because I control the organization in their notebook, and then they have it for the whole school year. The only downside is that the OneNote online, they can't write on it yet.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure that out with the
Absolutely. All right. Let me go check real quick. All right. So that's just looking at it, I think that the same thing, I think you do a better job than a lot of people as far as using technology and how that technology is played throughout the classroom. And I think that goes back to the planning. I think that, your team plans well, and looking at the data, and also just making sure that everything is focused on that data and making lessons that are based on that data. Well, I plan on following up with you soon. I'm gonna stop back by in your classroom sometime soon, and I appreciate your time. Think about some of the things that you really reflected on yourself that maybe you can change, and if there's anything that you need help with, let me know. Okay?
I appreciate it, Mr. Banks.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Just by our interview.
All right, thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
It was recording still.